Family and religion were the cornerstones of Doug and Joni Lamb's public personas. However, everything came crashing down when Lisa Weiss revealed facts that nobody was prepared to hear. Whispers became incontrovertible truth in an instant, startling followers and leaving them wanting explanations. What did Lisa say that caused Doug and Joni to fight? Not reveal? At this precise second, everything starts to break apart, and once you hear it, it's impossible to ignore. Keep an eye on it before it's removed. Doug Weiss's platform grew steadily under Lisa Weiss's unassuming leadership for more than 30 years. Lisa remained at home to raise their children, manage the household, and support Doug's purpose as he toured speaking on marriage and commitment. They appeared to be the epitome of a model Christian couple, totally committed to one another and their mission. However, when no one was looking, Lisa felt much more invisible than someone to work beside. Whether it was fielding phones, penning books, or getting ready for the next conference, Doug never slowed down. Lisa would eagerly await his return home, yearning for a comforting chat or even just a glance that conveyed, "I see you." However, on many occasions, he arrived weary, preoccupied, and emotionally fragile. Not present. His focus remains fixed on the upcoming gathering. At dinner, Lisa would be the lonely one sitting across from him as he fiddled with his phone or plotted his next move. Not only was the isolation excruciating, but there were other challenges as well. As she felt invisible at home, she watched the man she loved teach thousands of men how to love their wives and preserve their marriages on stage. Whenever Doug spoke on the importance of cherishing one's spouse and fighting for one's marriage, she would find herself wondering why similar messages never made it to their own family dinner table. "Be patient," Lisa told herself year after year. The busy season, she assured herself, eventually they will get back together and Doug would see her again. She put her faith in God to mend their marriage via prayer. Maintaining her composure, she shielded their joint ministry and Doug's reputation, all in the vain hope that her suffering would be for naught. However, the distance between them simply widened throughout the years. Lisa saw her own deterioration as she let go of the vibrant aspects of her personality. She failed to. It wasn't enough for her to lose her spouse. She was also losing herself. Lisa felt unheard and ignored every time she attempted to express her emotions to Doug. He would simply nod, say he will change, and then go on to something else. She wasn't broken by a single major altercation. Even when life breaks your plans, it doesn't mean you have to break. Lisa's story became an inspiration of quiet bravery. Reclaiming one's voice is not about being too theatrical or loud, she discovered. Choosing to speak your truth every day, even when it hurts, is sometimes all it takes. It's not easy, but you have to tell yourself that you deserve hope, respect, and love. After Lisa found her voice and her future again, she became an inspiration to many who were also struggling. Her story exemplified the power of perseverance, the fact that your value is independent of the decisions of others, and the promise of a better future, ready to embrace you, even in the midst of burdensome memories. Even when you're alone, your opinion counts, and the future is still in your hands, she told the audience. On a daily basis, the feeling of being invisible and unheard eroded. It was all the lonely evenings spent praying for a husband who was there in body, but emotionally absent, the empty chair next to her at church, and the innumerable quiet dinners eaten alone. The universe shrank for Lisa. From her aspirations neglected in order to maintain the facade of a robust family in the ministry. Something changed inside Lisa in 2024. A realization washed over her. She could no longer endure silence, preserving an untrue narrative. With bravery, she revealed her tale, not because I'm bitter, but because I want to share the truth and help people feel free. With poise and conviction, She shared the story of how she had hidden away for years, maintaining her marriage on her own, all the while Doug preached about being faithful. For other married women who felt isolated, Lisa's voice became an anchor. It reminded them that the ability to remain silent is not indicative of their value, but rather, the bravery to speak up is. She proved that it's possible to restore one's voice and take center stage in one's own narrative at any point in time, even after years of obscurity. Lisa found a voice via sharing her silent struggle. Rediscovering her identity, she started to speak her truth. From the outside looking in, Doug and Lisa Weiss appeared to be the epitome of a wonderful Christian couple. Speaking publicly, penning books, and making appearances on Christian television, Doug was a well-respected marriage counselor who taught others the importance of faithfulness and how to only so they may keep their marriages together. Lisa played the role of the dependable wife, taking care of their children, running the household, and supporting her husband while he developed a platform preaching about commitment and devotion. But Lisa was hiding a harsh truth behind the meticulously constructed picture, and it didn't match the message that Doug disseminated globally. As Doug encouraged other men to value their wives, stay committed to their marriages, and prioritize their partners, Lisa sat alone at home, yearning for his gaze to meet hers once more. Cleaning up after family and preparing dinner for a man who paid her little attention. That was her. Dinners consumed in solitude, and nights spent longing for a link that never materialized. Appointments with the ministry, counseling sessions, and frequent travel occupied Doug's life. The sacrifices, Lisa assured herself, were for God's glory, and she hoped that he would eventually slow down and call back the hopes and dreams they once had in common. The hectic seasons, however, never stopped. Doug's phone relentlessly beeped. His schedule remained packed, and Lisa found herself with fewer and fewer time to wish for his return. To him, Lisa sang her solo, just as Lisa thought he may return. Shrinking in size, as their personal lives fell apart, Lisa felt an intensified sense of anguish as she witnessed Doug's public persona flourish. Even though Doug promised to defend her marriage, she felt abandoned by her husband as she sat through his sermons on chasing your spouse and staying married. While he was too exhausted to even ask her how her day was, she would watch him cheerfully encourage couples to seek counseling and fight for one another on television. On the surface, Doug didn't seem nasty. He was calm and collected as he left the house. His emotional presence was noticeably lacking as he physically there, giving Lisa meaningless nods and tiny smiles. Lisa felt like a ghost in her own house, and she sacrificed her own wants to protect the reputation of the man she loved. The betrayal that was made public didn't happen all at once. The package arrived in the gradual accumulation of moments across time. The times they failed to communicate, the times they begged for one another's attention, and the times they put Doug's ministry ahead of their marriage. Lisa couldn't help but feel a twinge of dishonesty whenever Doug preached about love on stage, internalizing those principles. After the marriage of Doug and Lisa dissolved, everything changed. Doug wasted no time getting married to famous Christian TV anchor Joni Lamb, only months after finalizing his divorce. Around the globe, Christian leaders congratulated them on their magnificent testimonies, and social media messages about God's timing and joyful images captured the shocking but joyous union. However, Lisa felt betrayed by the marriage, which undermined her beliefs. Over the course of several decades, she had raised their children while Doug worked to further his cause. Lisa was still attempting to come to terms with the end of their life together when he publicly celebrated his new love with another lady, despite his preaching about commitment. To be sure, Doug's second marriage was a factor. It was the public acclaim and the speed with which it occurred. After praying with Lisa and Doug, friends began to post blessings for Doug and Joni, ignoring Lisa entirely. After praising Lisa for her quiet strength, the Christian community began to focus on Doug's new chapter, completely disregarding the lady who had given her everything to establish the life that Doug was now leaving behind. Before the divorce was finalized, rumors started circulating over whether Doug and Joni had become close. The timetable seemed too quick and too tidy to be as easy as they said, but Lisa couldn't prove it. Nights were spent reliving memories, wondering if the man, her longtime confidant, was busy making plans for a fresh start as she prayed for their marriage to mend. Doug and Joni's tale was presented to the public as a witness of new beginnings and divine timing, with a focus on the role of God. However, Lisa saw it as a cruel reminder that her life's accomplishments were fleeting, would be quickly replaced with a caption praising God's faithfulness and a smile on camera. In Lisa's mind, her own story had been obliterated. As she was forced to explain to her children why their father was now in a new relationship, she came across images of Doug and Joni smiling together. Married life, the disappearance of their familiar family, and the apparent lack of concern from others for their suffering. The betrayal was too obvious for her to turn a blind eye to, no matter how much she fought to save her children from harm. The hypocrisy was the worst part for Lisa. Doug had spent a great deal of time encouraging people to remain faithful, fight for their relationships, and keep their vows. But he had celebrated a new love so hastily that Lisa was forced to pick up the emotional pieces. After learning that the devoted man had not battled for his own marriage, Lisa felt abandoned by him. Shrouded in mystery, as if not real, Lisa came to the realization in those peaceful times that her value was not defined by Doug's decisions. Her undying devotion and affection for him endured through his public betrayal and duplicity. The marriage, despite its agony, it served as a catalyst for Lisa to rediscover her voice and take control of her narrative. Lisa, in private, started to rebuild herself after learning that betrayal may still make room for healing and new beginnings, while Doug and Joni worked on their public personas. Her discovery was that she found resilience in the face of a betrayal that seemed destined to shatter her, proving to her that a man's acceptance or the affirmation of her public image were never criteria for her value. The destiny of Lisa was not determined by Doug's public betrayal and hypocrisy. On the contrary, it showcased her strength, her religion, and her resilience in the face of societal attempts to bury her voice. Doug and Lisa Weiss were the epitome of a model Christian couple, according to the outside world. On stage and in front of television audiences, Doug, the marriage counselor with the perfect vocabulary, spoke about faithfulness, loyalty, and sticking up for your marriage. His followers took notes, as he taught them how to mend broken marriages and heal themselves. Everyone looked to him as a leader who possessed both wisdom and power, someone who had all the answers. Lisa, his charming, reserved wife, stood in the background of the pictures and events next to him, helping Doug with his quest as they take care of their children and the house. They represented the ideal of a virtuous marriage to those on the outside looking in. They were a team, a couple in ministry, who were putting their religion into practice. Despite her flawless public persona, Lisa was actually plagued by, faced with solitude and subtle suffering. Lisa waited patiently at home for Doug to return after his sermons on connection and intimacy, all the while he was busy ministering to couples. Even though they hardly ate together, she was busy cooking and folding clothes while Doug was out calling clients. When he finally got home, they may engage in a genuine discussion for a brief period. But such times were infrequent. Numerous speaking engagements, book deadlines, and travels filled Doug's life at all times. Lisa felt that she had lost her place in his quest for God. Sitting alone, she would watch him on TV as he encouraged husbands to value their wives, pursue them, and cherish them. She would wonder why those words didn't seem to apply in their own home. People would approach Lisa at church and express their gratitude for her husband, Doug. If they could, they would. Lisa would nod politely, holding back tears as she complimented his teachings and his dedication. Because behind her public persona, she was quietly deteriorating, going unnoticed even by her husband. Lisa had a tough time dealing with more than just the loneliness, though that was a constant burden. The bewilderment came from sharing a house with a guy who could preach the gospel of faithfulness and love yet failed to notice the suffering of his own family. It wasn't unkind of Doug. Neither was he physically abusing her. But he wasn't there at all. Bound to a reality that rejected the lady who had been his rock for so long. Even though they lived together, Lisa felt lonely. As they shared meals, Doug's thoughts would wander to his upcoming travel plans or public speaking engagement. Sometimes Lisa would strike up a conversation, relating to her emotions and the increasing space between them. But Doug would attend the meeting for the ministry or the therapy session for just a few minutes before moving on to something else. She reminded herself that this was temporary, and that Doug would remember their vows when he slowed down. In their youth, recalling the times they spent up late together, dreaming of a ministry career, raising a family, and serving God, she felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. Silence and emotional distance, however, supplanted the dreams. Lisa did her best to maintain her faith, convinced that Doug would meet her again if she merely persisted, prayed, and served sufficiently. She made an effort to start conversations about their marriage, organized date evenings, and left him notes. However, Doug was perpetually preoccupied, exhausted, and oblivious. The dates would be acceptable to him, though he does look at his phone while eating. While she was speaking, he would merely nod in agreement. He was preoccupied with something else. While Doug ignored the problems that were causing strife in his own household, he continued to preach about marriage on television and in churches, adding insult to injury. As Lisa saw him smile and cheer him on, encouraging one another to fiercely defend their marriages, to persevere through thick and thin, and to treasure one another. The man's hypocrisy, that is, his inability to live up to his own words, was the source of the intense pain of betrayal, not an affair. It wasn't a dramatic, explosive moment when the marriage ended. The gradual, slowly disintegrating years of going unnoticed and unheard, of Lisa seeking a connection that never materialized, and of Doug repeatedly prioritizing his purpose over their marriage. The subsequent public remarrying to Joni Lamb followed. Lisa felt like she was gasping for air because everything happened so fast. Months after Doug and his ex-wife finalized their divorce, he was posing with a new girlfriend, grinning for the cameras, and posting about their faith on social media. The globe beheld it as a breathtaking symbol of fresh starts. Lisa, on the other hand, felt betrayed by all she had done to aid. The platform was built by Doug. The same Christian groups who had formerly respected Lisa's modest faithfulness were the ones who praised and congratulated Doug and Joni when they uploaded happy images. As if Lisa had never happened, Doug's friends who had prayed for her and him were now reveling in his new chapter. Their narrative was covered by Christian media as a divine blessing, completely disregarding the suffering of the woman who was left behind. Additionally, Lisa could see evidence of Doug's rapid progress in every direction she turned. As she continued to attempt to elucidate the situation to their children, she would come across social media posts praising his recent marriage. In an instant, everything had transformed. Her kids were of an age to understand what was going on. They could read the news and comprehend the bewilderment of seeing their dad start over while they were still grieving the loss of the family they had known. Lisa felt betrayed by more than just parting ways with Doug. It was a rejection of the shared vision, the story they had created, and the vows they had made to God. It hurt to see a man who encouraged people to stay in their marriages break off ties with his own and start a new chapter in his life without regret. Lisa thought the world had forgotten about her suffering and had gone on without her, honoring a story that gave her the impression that she was irrelevant. Feelings of inadequacy, failure, or wrongdoing consumed her as she questioned her own worthiness of her heart's desire. Lisa felt her inner fortitude reawaken in the solitude. The manner Doug moved on did not diminish the love and devotion she had given him for so many years, and she began to realize that her value was not defined by his public persona. While Doug was enjoying life in the limelight, she came to the realization that she was quietly remaking her life while constructing a new persona. Doug and Joni gave the world a sanitized version of their story, but Lisa's inner anguish served as a sobering reminder that there is sometimes unseen grief lurking beneath the surface of seemingly flawless lives. She found out that her tale had significance, that her loyalty was valued, and that she could perceive herself and rediscover her importance even when others did not. Despite the quiet, Lisa's voice mattered, and she learned that it is possible to rise from betrayal and find hope after grief via her path through pain. She had emerged from her role as the unseen spouse playing a supporting role in someone else's narrative. A lady reclaiming her life, that is what she was. Little by little, making the conscious decision to live an honest and courageous life, even when no one was looking. Once the dust settled, Lisa Weiss sat alone in a peaceful house, gazing at the cold, lifeless walls that had once warmed her. Distractions from Doug's public persona. She felt as if the world had spun around her in an instant, what with all the images of him smiling with Joni Lamb and the acclaim from Christian circles. Lisa had long played the role of the supporting character, keeping her family together, while Doug lectured to others about commitment and devotion. It seemed as though Doug had wiped Lisa from his life once he remarried. With her assistance, a life was built. It appeared as though the ministry she had nurtured and the family she had attended to had progressed without her. Those who had previously lauded Lisa for her role as the silent, strong wife were suddenly gushing over Doug and Joni, as if Lisa didn't even exist. The betrayal was bad enough, but the fact that it was all so public made the grief even worse. While everyone else rejoiced over Doug's fresh start, she was left to mourn in silence. Lisa first became stuck and unsure about what to do next. Getting out of bed was a struggle due to the weight of betrayal and loneliness. She frequently checked her phone, read comments hailing Doug's marriage as a miracle, and see remarks praising his new union. In the midst of her confusion, anguish, and the deafening quiet of a house that no longer seemed like home, she felt as if her years of devotion and selflessness had been for nothing. Yet somewhere in the midst of, Lisa felt a change coming on within as the room fell silent. Ultimately, she saw that her value was unrelated to Doug's decisions. As Doug and Joni worked to establish themselves in the public eye, she realized that she had a life of her own to lead. She has the power to influence her own future by making her own choices, and her recovery, unaided by outside forces. Bit by bit, at her own unique moments, she began to reassert her voice. Lisa started going for morning walks, where she could experience the discomfort instead of avoiding it, and breathe in the fresh air. She began keeping a notebook in which she expressed the long-suppressed emotions of hurt, perplexity, and wrath. She had believed that remaining silent was the correct thing to do for a long time, as she wanted to shield Doug's reputation and their ministry from harm. However, she had come to the realization that her silence had been extremely costly. She began to recall her past self before to the anguish, the treachery, and the point at which she felt invisible to herself. She possessed aspirations, loved her children profoundly, and deserved to be recognized and appreciated for who she was. She started to ask God for more than simply a happy marriage again. just as she had before, but with the fortitude to start again on her own, to mend her broken heart, and to face the future with confidence. It was difficult. The waves of sadness would crash over her one day, making it impossible for her to catch her breath. On those evenings when the isolation was too much to handle, and she would weep, pleading with God to explain why her life had taken this path. Lisa, though, discovered a new type of resilience as the days went by. The power that arises from knowing you have triumphed over adversity. Talking to other women who had been through the same things helped Lisa a lot, so that she could talk to other women who understood the anguish of betrayal and the difficulty of rebuilding one's life after suffering such a devastating loss. She decided to attend a support group. 4. After a considerable period, Lisa finally felt acknowledged. More than that, she was Doug Weiss's ex-wife. The woman was Lisa, and she was strong, had a story, and had a future worth fighting for. Lisa began to share her story as she regained her confidence and strength. Motivating her actions was a desire to alleviate the silent pain of other women, rather than resentment or vengeance. Their suffering was genuine, and she hoped they would find solace in the fact that they were not judged by the opinions of others. She divulged. Telling her story openly and honestly, she hopes to encourage people that it's okay to feel damaged and that healing is possible. After struggling with boundary setting throughout her marriage, Lisa finally mastered it. Taking care of herself emotionally and mentally was not an indulgence, she understood. It was an absolute need. So she may recover. Instead of worrying about upholding the ideal of another person's life, she started constructing her own life with poise and purpose. Little things also brought her joy again. Taking her time while she prepares supper. She laughs uncontrollably, spends quality time with her children, and sits outside to watch the sunrise. She is completely present when she is with her children. She used these experiences as a foundation for her new life. Even in the midst of her pain, Lisa found a glimmer of optimism. In her own story, she may emerge as the protagonist, rather than a mere supporting player in a brand new narrative. The key to Lac's success in reclaiming her voice and future was not ignoring her mistakes, but rather making the conscious decision to grow from them. She acknowledged that the events were a component of. She was free to let her past determine her destiny. She could mourn her losses while continuing to move forward, grateful for the fortitude and insight she had gleaned from her suffering. For her part, she was able to forgive herself for keeping quiet for so long. Throughout the years, she sincerely thought that being silent was a sign of fidelity, that by safeguarding Doug's reputation, she was acting morally. However, she had come to realize that being true to herself was equally crucial. Furthermore, being honest allowed her to pay tribute to herself and the path she had taken.